بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. So let's continue with the Ulum al-Quran, and I wanted to share with you, as was your task, to reconstruct in a manner of your liking the Sirah timeline. So if you go to the QuranicFramework.com website and we go to the More section and Resources, then we can see the timeline, the second resource there, the timeline. And you can see Makki and Madani period outlined very briefly, but it is very important to have some idea, at least at this level, for everyone, about what were the key milestones in the Makki and the Madani period, because last lesson we were studying the Makki and Madani ayat, or the Makki and Madani revelations, and therefore it is important. So if we just very quickly, we can see that the first year it mentions the first revelation, second year, then there is some private propagation of this message, and the message of this is obviously the message of Iman. Iman is the key message. Iman in Allah and Iman in the Akhirah. And these two, of course, if you accept this, then you are believing in the messenger, which is Iman bil Risala. The fourth year sees the end of that private propagation, and then from the fifth year, the persecution starts against the believers because they come out in public. So that leads to the migration to Abyssinia. And then we find as persecution is increasing, Allah Ta'ala, He is also strengthening the believers. So we see the conversion of Umar and Hamza radiallahu anhuma in the sixth year of Nabawi. And further challenges are met in terms of social and economic boycott, where the believers have to live for 3 years in the valley of Abu Talib. And they have been completely boycotted, but then Allah Ta'ala, He also removes this difficulty. So you can see this is a beautiful example of Innamal Usri Yusra. With difficulty comes ease. The boycott is removed, and the believers have the position to come back to Makkah. And then the Prophet, he finds that he loses his beloved wife, Khadija radiallahu anha, and his uncle Abu Talib, who has always supported him against the Quraysh. So he has acted as a shield, if you like, to some extent. But then this support, in terms of the worldly support, of course Allah Ta'ala, He is always there to support the Prophet ﷺ, but this apparent support is also removed. And then we find that slowly Allah Ta'ala, He is enabling the believers to be supported by people from Yathrib, from Medina. So people take the pledge, and then in the 12th year of Nabawi, Allah Ta'ala, He gives the Prophet ﷺ the miraculous journey of Isra and Mi'raj to show him his status of being the leader of all prophets and all messengers and all of mankind in that regard. And so Allah Ta'ala, He lifts the spirits of the Prophet ﷺ and the believers at a time when it is looking very gloomy. And then the 13th year of Nabawi, Allah Ta'ala, He commands the Prophet ﷺ to do hijrah for the next stage of the message. So we see that. And then briefly, Madani period, very different. As we mentioned last time, the main themes of Makki Quran were what? Iman, I also mentioned, very good.
Prophets,
Stories, prophets. What was the purpose of that?
to warn.
To warn. To warn who? Quraysh. And
Prophets are working, could learn from him.
good, and to strengthen the Prophet ﷺ, لِيُثَبِّتَ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ, to strengthen your resolve. And then in Medina, now the themes and the characteristics of the surah are more towards which people? Who are the addressees here in Medina?
Muslim.
Believers,
People of the
people of the book,
Munafiqeen.
munafiqeen, hypocrites, yeah? So these are the main audience here. So Madani period, we find Hijrah takes place. The Prophet ﷺ, he arrives in Medina. He welcomed in Medina with open arms and open hearts and open minds. And he establishes the Medina, the center of the believers' masjid. And he also makes a brotherhood between the Ansar and Muhajirun, the migrants and the helpers, to support each other. And then we find, and then he has also entered into peace agreements with the key tribes in and around Medina for the joint defense of Medina and the believers. So this is all strategic for a community, yeah? So in Medina, it is all about establishing a firm community based on the guidance. And because the roots of this community have already been, if you like, strengthened in Makkah, yes, Iman. Now it is all about how do you live now according to this Iman. So this is the beginning of that building of a society. And at the same time, there are even bigger challenges now, because there is now the Quraysh army and the Quraysh, and then after that in Badr we find that they are defeated. In Uhud they return, the believers, they learn the lessons of being disciplined and obedient to their messenger and people in charge of them. And then after that we find in the 5th year Ahzab takes place, Khandaq, or the trench, in which all of Arabia and its outskirts, all of the people basically against this message and messenger, they join forces to try and wipe out. Essentially, this is what they envisaged. They thought this would be an easy, would be a walkover. We would wipe them out. But Allah Ta'ala, He has a plan to make His message and messenger succeed and conquer against all these difficulties and obstacles, and they are utterly defeated without even fighting. 6th year, Allah Ta'ala changes this, you could say, the times of challenge and to some extent fear. Allah Ta'ala mentions khawf wal-ju' and naqs min al-amwal, to a very clear and plain victory, which is not clear and plain initially, but then it is with the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. Because the Treaty of Hudaybiyah essentially forces the Quraysh to recognize the believers as a power to reckon with. So once they are established that these are a people that we can and we should enter into a treaty, this is a very big political win for the believers. Yeah, so they are now recognized as an authority. And then after that, Allah Ta'ala, He strengthens the believers even further, and they have the Fatha of Khaybar, which is a Jewish stronghold. And then after that, the historic conquest, Fatha of Makkah, in which the Prophet ﷺ, he returns approximately after 20 years back to his homeland, if you like, and to the Kaaba, to restore the original Kaaba to what it was meant for and what it was built for, which was to worship Allah alone. And then we find after the conquest of Makkah, the Prophet ﷺ, because he is always vigilant about his surroundings, so he is very vigilant and very aware of the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire is now feeling that this new empire, which is going to become an empire, is becoming a threat. So they want to destroy, demolish, get rid of this potential threat of the Muslims before it can actually become a real threat in their eyes. And therefore the Prophet ﷺ has to make a very, very difficult decision. Yes, a very difficult decision at a time where it is very difficult. Economically, it is very difficult. Socially, it is very difficult. Economically, it's difficult because they've had a famine. Then after that, economically difficult because they have the date palm crop, which is ripe to pick. And socially challenging because they have the hypocrites internally and the other tribes of the Jews who are still plotting against the believers with Quraysh, etc. So the Prophet ﷺ has to now make a decision now. Do we wait and strengthen ourselves economically, militarily, until the Romans, they attack us, and they're a huge army? Or do we attack them by surprise, where we are obviously we're completely outnumbered? So he takes this step, and the companions, they are wholeheartedly with him. This is when Abu Bakr, he gives everything, and Umar brings half of everything for to support financially the expedition to Tabuk. And they all leave for Tabuk, which is far away, at the cost of their cash crop, their date crop. And it is extremely harsh weather, extremely hot, and it is far, as Allah mentioned in Surah Tawbah. And this also shows the social challenge. It aids that in that the munafiqeen are now very clear to be seen. These are the munafiqeen, because they are the people who do not go to the battle. And Tabuk is the only battle in the life of the Prophet where it was mandatory for every male to go. Yeah, adult male to go. No excuse. But they made excuse. Yeah? So this sifted out the believers. And this was also the initiation of the Prophet ﷺ, his message being, if you like, exported out of Arabia. Yeah, because his remit, the Prophet ﷺ's personal remit, was the Arabian Peninsula. This is your remit. This is where you have to establish the deen. You have to remove any shirk from here, yes, as an establishment. But his remit is there, that's his specific. There's a general remit, which is the whole of mankind until the last day. Yeah, so you have to understand that. So he's unique in that. No other messenger had this general remit for the whole of mankind. This Battle of Tabuk is the initiation of that outside of Arabia, if you like. And as we know, the year after the Prophet passes away, so he handed this over to the believers, as he says in the last sermon, that now people who are present will convey this to those who are not, in terms of geographic and time. So Tabuk is really handing over my message. You have to convey it to the rest of mankind, if you like. So inshallah, if we that's only looked at very, very briefly. If we have an understanding of Sirah, inshallah, briefly even, this is very important. Quran will inshallah become very clear. When we study Quran, very clear. Makki, which period, which year, oh, this was happening, etc. And this nicely takes us to the next topic that we're going to look at today, which is the reasons for the revelation, the asbab of nuzul, the reasons behind the circumstances, the events or incidents behind a revelation. And this is part of it, so the Sirah gives us context. So when you have context and you have asbab, now you're getting into the detail and nitty-gritty, and you can then understand it, inshallah, in much more clarity. So that was just briefly to do that. But please make sure you do this. Make sure you have your own timeline, inshallah. Okay, so lesson 9, is it today? Lesson 9, Bismillah. Today we want to talk about the Asbabun Nuzul. Asbabun Nuzul. Asbabun Nuzul means the reasons and the causes behind the revelation of an ayah or ayat, or it could be a surah. So the first thing given is the definition of Asbabun Nuzul, and he mentions in the book the event or occurrence. So there are two keywords that he has used in his book: an event that took place or an occurrence. And this can include a question, yeah? An occurrence could include a question that was posed to the Prophet ﷺ, or there was a matter that needed guidance. So the event or occurrence that was the direct cause of revelation of a particular ayah or surah. The event or occurrence, the occurrence includes question, that was the direct cause of revelation of a particular ayah or surah. He then breaks it down into two categories. The whole Quran is either, the ayat are either revealed with a sabab, a question, an event, an occurrence directly related to that, or without. Okay? It can be with or without. Most of the Quran is without sabab and nuzul. Most of it. So when you read the book, it will give you detail. I'm not going to go into that. I'll just summarize it. Sabab and nuzul generally, not technically here, but generally, sabab and nuzul can refer to why was the Quran sent down? You get it? For guidance. For guidance. But here we are not talking about that sabab and nuzul. We're talking about specific incident, event, occurrence, question, and in light of that, therefore, this ayah or this surah will be good. So there's a difference. So most of the Quran is without that technical sabab and nuzul. And then, of course, there are then some ayat in the Quran which are because of sabab and nuzul. An example that's given here is that of inheritance. Jabir ibn Abdullah, he came to the Prophet ﷺ, he asked him, how do I divide my inheritance? Therefore, then the ayat in Surah Al-Nisa, ayah 11, they have cited to be revealed. So you can see that this is a long ayah. Yuthikumullahu fil awladikum. So Allah Ta'ala, He is now instructing you regarding your children, the inheritance, who gets what. So this ayah, very comprehensive ayah about the shares of inheritance. So this is cited as the example. Okay. Is that okay so far? Yeah. Then mentions the books on Asbab al-Nuzul. He mentioned a book by the teacher of Imam al-Bukhari. So there's a teacher by the name of Ali al-Madani, rahimahullah, who died in 234 Hijri. He was the first one to write a book on Asbab al-Nuzul, but it has been lost in terms of it not being accessible completely. There is access to what he said through other narrations of people, but there is not the complete book. The other two books that he has cited, which were later on, this is by Abul Hasan Ali al-Wahidi. Al-Wahidi is known for this Asbab al-Nuzul, his book. He died 487. So that is 250 years after Ali al-Madani. Yeah, so that's 2.5 centuries later. And then if you now fast forward 500 years nearly, 450 years, Jalaluddin al-Suyuti, he writes Lubab al-Nukul, which means the essence of what has been transmitted fi Asbab al-Nuzul. So he has summarized, he has tried to bring all of that together. And also Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar has also written books on Asbab al-Nuzul. So of course there are others, but these are the prominent main ones that he has cited for us to have an understanding. Okay. Anything so far? Happy? The book then goes on to say, how do you derive Asbab al-Nuzul, that this is the correct or the authentic or the better Asbab al-Nuzul? So he says that if it is a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, so the first category, Prophet ﷺ, in a hadith, he says, so and so came to me, or it is narrated by a Sahabi who witnessed it, who was present there, not secondhand, that I heard somebody say that the Prophet ﷺ. So the first is, the Sahabi says the Prophet ﷺ was sitting and this person came, asked this question, and then these ayat were revealed. So that's the first category. You take that as the sabab of al-nuzul. And then there's discussion on what do we regard the tabi'een as in this context, or the successors who were after the companions. Yeah. So there's one opinion that says that you stick to just the Sahaba. So they were there firsthand. The other opinion is you can take the tabi'een as long as there is a very direct and known association between the tabi'i, the successor, and the companion. So he is known as the student of the companion. He is known to be knowledgeable regarding the Quran. Then you can take from that tabi'i. So even with Asbab al-Nuzul, and which essentially all of this is all about preserving the Quran. You can hopefully you've seen that, preserving the understanding of the Quran. So there are so many layers, so many dimensions in which Allah Ta'ala He has made sure that the Quran and its message is preserved. And it is preserved in a manner, and this is a miracle. This is one of the miraculous aspects, which we will look at later on anyway. And the whole section on that the Quran is guidance for all times. So this is a misconception amongst non-Muslims, especially because their context has been the scripture, which we don't entirely know which part of it is actually in the scripture or not, like the Bible or the Injil and the Torah that they claim to be. Therefore, they say that, oh, those books were for that time. Now times have changed. Very common, and times have changed. So we have to either disregard that, or we have to reinterpret it, whole thing. So that is the absolute mess, basically. But the Quran has been preserved in that manner, that its fundamentals are there, which are clear, muhkam. The Asbab al-Nuzul that we're looking at, they are there for us to understand, case study and application. And then we have context of the seerah, and then we have preservation of it itself, the text, and the meaning, as mentioned, to hadiths, companions, tabi'in, tabi'in, etc. So all these things, they add up to that, inshallah. So the names they're given, the famous tabi'in, for their direct association with the companions, Mujahid, Ikrimah, Sa'id ibn Jubair, Qatada. And when you read Ibn Kathir, you will read these names frequently. These names come up frequently, yeah? So now you realize, inshallah, oh yes, this is a tabi'in. He is a successor after the companions, but he's obviously a student of a companion, like we mentioned in the beginning. There are some famous ones listed. So this is how to derive the Asbab al-Nuzul. Okay. And then the last section I prepared here is the wording of the Sahaba, and which one do you take? But there's two categories of the wordings regarding a Sabab al-Nuzul, yeah? One is direct, meaning Sahabi says, I saw this, that the Prophet did this, person, as I mentioned, came before, and now this was revealed. And then there is another category, which is obviously not authentic, that I heard that this person came, and asked this question and this was revealed. So both of them can be sabab al-nuzul, but the first category is taken as the stronger one, and that is what you base your sabab al-nuzul on. And the second category is, as long as it doesn't contradict the first, then it's okay, but that is less authentic.
Is that the same as سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أن رسول الله
Anna kya hoga?
You know there's a hadith that say عن جابر بن عبد الله أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال and then it's عن جابر بن عبد الله.
What is it by an? Did he himself hear it or not?
That's almost like,
No, I don't know about that because that's hadith science, isn't it?
Oh.
There would be a difference. If there is a difference, there may not be. I don't know.
they're saying something in the Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal program.
I don't know. Okay. No, I don't know.
Explain difference.
He was, yeah? We'll watch that in a minute. Okay, I wanted to just cite some examples about what we're saying here. So he's talking about, this is an example I'm giving you. I'll read, have you got your books? Or you got online? Yeah. Online? Should have bought the book from me. Everything else comes next day, except for the books. Allah understand. Huh? Yeah, Allah. You should buy a physical copy. Buy it. Invest in it. Invest in it in these days, yeah? The 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. Order it today. Don't worry about it, it's 20, 30 pounds. Order it. If you people, I think your socks may be 20, 30 pounds if you have Nike written on it. Huh?
I use your socks.
I know you do. Yeah, so don't fear. If you want, when you spend money and sometimes you think, should I, shouldn't I? When it comes to knowledge of the deen, spend it. Spend it. The best investment, inshallah. Yeah? So buy the book, please, inshallah.
I'm marketing book in the book. Spend it.
Yeah, exactly. So page 110. So I'll read the paragraph before it so you can see the context. Yeah, it says, we'll read it. It is possible that there exists more than one narration concerning the sabab and nuzul of a particular ayah. It says that this will be discussed in more detail in the next section, but the point that is wished to be understood here is that if one of the reports is narrated in an unequivocal, clear manner, yeah, very clear, then the former is taken to be the sabab al-nuzul, and the latter, which is not clear, is then not taken. Perhaps an example will better clarify. So the example they're given is in Surah Al-Baqarah 223. Nisa'ukum harthul lakum fa'tu harthakum anna shi'tum. Your wives are a tilth for you, so go into your tilth as and when you wish. The verse has two narrations concerning its sabab and nuzul. Yeah? The two narrations we're looking at have come about this. Which one is more authentic? Umar radiallahu anhu, he is one of the narrators. He says he narrated this verse was revealed concerning the anal intercourse and its prohibition, and the reference is given, reported in Al-Bukhari. On the other hand, there exists another narration from Jabir ibn Abdullah radiallahu anhu, in which he stated that this verse was revealed in response to a question from the Ansar. Yeah? So now he's being explicit. Question from this person to the Prophet. And he says the Jews of Medina used to claim that if a person had intercourse with his wives from the back, then the child would be born with a deficiency. When the Ansar asked the Prophet about this superstition, Allah revealed this verse instructing them that such intercourse was allowed. This is reported also in Al-Bukhari. So both ahadiths are in Sahih Al-Bukhari. Yeah? But the difference is that Jabir ibn Abdullah said, I saw this person ask, yeah, or this person asked. So this explains that. In this example, it is seen that there are two narrations. For the sabab al-nuzul of the verse, the narration of Ibn Umar is of the second type of wording. It could imply that the verse was revealed in response to the question. Yeah? So it could just mean general question, it's saying. Or it could imply that the verse prohibits anal intercourse. But the report of Jabir is explicit in its wording, in that the verse was revealed in response to that particular question. So you get the difference, yeah? So Jabir's narration is explicitly saying, this was the question, this is the ayah. Okay, so that is more authentic in the being the sabab al-nuzul. These are authentic, but in it being the reason for the revelation of that particular ayah, that is more, that is a stronger. In that regard, it is stronger. Yeah. Okay. The next section, I will just, as I said briefly, you have to read. So this is, you need to read it. It's not difficult. It's pretty straightforward, but you have to go through it yourself. You have to read it yourself. Talking about multiple asbab and nuzul for one verse. So one verse is revealed, but then we need to realize that there are instances in the Quran of ayat or an ayah or a short surah which have been revealed for different reasons. Yeah, the ayah is the same, or the surah is the same, but it was revealed for different reasons, asbab, which could have taken place in different times, or it could have taken at the same time. So just to have that in mind, and not to limit it, that oh, this ayah was revealed just for this, that was the sabab, that's it. But if we think like that, then we get confused when we find a report that says something slightly different. That's what they're trying to make us realize, that you have to have an open mind. If you have different narrations, then you should realize it could have happened, and it has happened, that there have been different asbab and nuzul for one verse. So example here is, there are two reports concerning this surah 93, وَالضُّحَى وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا سَجَى مَا وَدَّعَ رَبُّكَ وَمَا قَلَى. It says, Al-Bukhari and Muslim narrate that once the Prophet ﷺ did not receive wahi inspiration for a few days. So one of the women of the Quraysh, she ridiculed him, ﷺ, saying, "Oh Muhammad, I think your Satan has left you." So Allah then revealed these verses in response to her. So this is one narration. Yeah? On the other hand, there exists another narration in At-Tabarani stating that the Prophet ﷺ did not receive inspiration for a few days, so he started worrying about this. And this caused the servant of the Prophet ﷺ to clean the house, and she discovered a dead puppy under the bed. When she removed it, the surah was revealed. Since this narration is weak, it is rejected as sabab and nuzul. So they're saying there can be more than one sabab, but this is weaker according to this. Okay, and then it gives you different examples of what if they're both authentic, what you do, what if one is not authentic, etc. So you have to read through that, yeah? I'm not going to go through all of that. But you should make sure you read through it. So then you will get familiar with the ayat as well, where sabab is relevant. Okay. And then the next section, it says multiple ayat for one sabab al-nuzul. Same question, yeah? And the famous one is that Salama, she asked Prophet ﷺ that the Quran doesn't mention women. It doesn't mention women. Although in Arabic, when the male, I don't know how to say, is used, male, when male, in English, addressed is, let's say, and male is addressed. It actually includes women as well. Yeah. So it's not really a big issue. But anyway, then many ayat were revealed in response to that. Yeah. So on page 115, it mentions in response to her comment, Allah Ta'ala He revealed in Surah Al-Nisa, and we're in Surah Al-Nisa, so we look at it on here as well, ayah 32. وَلَا تَتَمَنَّوْا مَا فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ بِهِ بَعْضَكُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ لِلرِّجَالِ نَصِيبٌ مِّمَّا اكْتَسَبُوا وَلِلنِّسَاءِ. So now the women are mentioned. وَلِلنِّسَاءِ نَصِيبٌ مِّمَّا اكْتَسَبْنَا وَاسْأَلُوا اللَّهَ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِكُمْ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمًا. And do not wish for that by which Allah has made some of you exceed others. For men is a share of what they've earned, and for women is a share of what they have earned. So this is one response to the same sabab al-nuzul, yeah? A question posed by Salama radiallahu anha, one of the ayat. Then second is in Surah 33, in response to the same question, and this is ayat 35. That why are women not mentioned? Then Allah Ta'ala mentioned, Innal Muslimina wal Muslimat. Male men, Muslims and female. Wal mu'minina wal mu'minat, believing women. Wal qanitina wal qanitat, obedient women. Wal sadiqina wal sadiqat, those who are truthful. Al sabirina wal sabirat, patient. Khashina wal khashiat, humble. Wal mutasaddiqina wal mutasaddiqat, giving of sadaqah. Wal sa'imina wal sa'imat, those who fast. Wal hafidina furujahum wal hafidhat, those who protect their private parts. Wal dhakirina Allah kathiran wal dhakirat, women who abundantly remember Allah. Allah has promised them forgiveness and a great reward. So men and women have been mentioned side by side. And you find that in a few places in the Quran. And another ayah in Surah Al-Imran 195 is related to this sabab al-nuzul of her question. فَاسْتَجَابَ لَهُمْ رَبُّهُمْ أَنِّي لَا أُضِيعُ عَمَلَ عَامِلٍ مِنْكُمْ مِنْ ذَكَرٍ أَوْ أُنْثَى. So Allah Ta'ala, He responds to their dua that I will not let go to waste any of your rewards that you have done, whether you are male or female. This is a response. These three ayat are a response to one sabab al-nuzul. Yeah? Okay.